Hey, good morning, folks. When the Russian-Ukraine war started in February of 2022, I, like many other Americans and world people in the world, would look on various news media outlets, televisions, computers, for fresh perspectives, real news, perhaps not necessarily a slant or a bias, but just real, genuine stuff. Hard on the ground. Let's get the truth. Let's understand this. And of course, many of us, like myself, I can only speak for myself, was looking for these sources that were congruent with my own experience in the military, being a former Soviet Union order of battle analyst. So I'm looking for these things. I couldn't really find it. There was not really much out there until I found a few voices of reason in the West, or people from the West, but they're living over in Eastern Europe. One guy, his name is Patrick Lancaster. Now, I'm not going to really focus on him now, but I can perhaps in the future video, future talking about him. But I want to talk about this one fella named Gonzalo Lira. Okay. Now, I'm going to give you a 3 or 4 minute video clip here next as soon as I'm done talking about him, which pretty much summarizes why Mr. Gonzalo Lira was murdered in Ukraine, in a Ukrainian prison camp, prison's torture system, about a year ago, not quite a year ago by right now. I didn't know who this guy was. Apparently, he has been making videos under various names for many years, mainly catering towards guys, to making videos towards men, which I think is kind of interesting because we as men need to do a lot of development. We need to get out of our man caves, and we need to turn the television off, turn the sports off, stop looking at women, objectifying them, but being just kind people, finding your heart, learning what your ego is, and learning how to dismiss it and subjugate it. There's not many organizations that do that for guys. There's organizations, all the churches out there promote men, which is okay, but they don't do it in a manner that I think is beneficial for the bettering of society. They're more focused on the ego and the material aspect and the manly aspect. I'm ego driven, this and that. Really not so much of a center on the heart. What a guy needs to find. Men and women are different emotionally and spiritually. Maybe not spiritually, but definitely different emotionally. So we have different needs. Gonzalo Lira kind of tapped into that, and I didn't know him when he did that as Coach Red Pill. I only discovered him on my searching for alternative views about the Russian-Ukraine war. So anyways, I found this guy. He had a few different channels: Gonzalo Lira, Gonzalo Lira 2, and then Gonzalo Lira again. And then I think he had a channel where he did a round table where he'd bring people in and talk to them. Now, there is some controversy around his round tables, why he was doing that. Was he working for the Ukrainian intelligence services? I don't know. You can just watch his stuff and say, well, this is interesting. But this next video I'm going to post pretty much summarizes why Gonzalo Lira was allowed to be captured, and then allowed to die. He was pushed, into death, which is really sad because he spoke very well. He was able to articulate very well, in an entertaining manner that we could watch. And I invite you folks out there to go look on YouTube and watch his videos. I firmly believe that his videos are going to be timeless, meaning when we watch them years after they were made, we will say, wow, that's really good stuff. Kind of like my friend, the deceased Captain Eric May, in his writings about when he was in Ghost Troop, and when I was one of his NCOs in that Ghost Troop reconnaissance group years ago, 10, 15 years ago, um, which is another whole story in itself, which I probably should make a video about and talking about. But here's the next couple minutes. I want you to watch this Gonzalo Lira, and this is pretty much it. And I'm only making this because I want to keep his memory alive. I want to keep his type of storytelling and journalistic um, flavor, I guess that's a good word, alive, and introduce him to other people. So if you're a person that is watching this, and in the subsequent this whole cumulative video, you've never heard of this guy and now you do, I consider that a success. At least be aware of him, his message, way he talked, and he was a very folksy kind of a gentleman. And you could just watch his videos. At least I could watch his videos and just be, wow, this is very good. This is a good story. This is a good way of analysis and things like that. So you can clearly see why he was an enemy to various powers that be in the West, because he's talking about it right here about Western leadership. Okay, here we go.
Calculate dramatically in ways that can wind up being catastrophic. And here is the true tragedy. There is no leadership class that is waiting in the wings to shove aside these insane fools and take over and right the Western ship. That's the serious problem of the West. Because the West, the institutions of the West, the way the West selects its leadership class and how they rise up to the top, they all have a vested interest in the system, and they are not going to tip it over. And this system, unfortunately, elevates the most incompetent people. I've said this before a number of times over this past year and a half or so, that the West, the qualities that you need to succeed and rise into positions of leadership are not the same qualities you need to actually be competent in those leadership positions. And this disconnect between actual competence and how you achieve power has led to this incompetent leadership class. And if they were all replaced and the next tier of leaders were brought forth, they would be equally incompetent. And that's the fucking tragedy. Even if there is a complete collapse in the West, and let's just say that they don't go with nuclear weapons, which is what my bet is, that once they go into the Sino-American War and they start losing, the Americans will start using nuclear weapons against the Chinese. But let's assume for the sake of argument that that does not happen. Let's assume for the sake of argument that there is no Sino-American War, because the American economy and American society is so fragile and broken up that it just starts to crater, and there isn't the political will to go futzing around with China, and they have to just start, figuring out how to fix the shit show of the collapsing American regime. There isn't going to be anybody to come and save the ship. It's going to sink. And it's because of the leadership class. A leadership class that is unresponsive rather, to the people's will, a leadership class that is parochial, incompetent, and unable to learn from their mistakes. A leadership class that right now is panicking. And in this panic, if you are in the United States, for sure you're seeing this, they are becoming more and more repressive. The First Amendment, they are prosecuting people who just said the wrong thing insofar as Russia is concerned, the non-approved message, and they're going to go to jail. The basic qualities of the West are being betrayed by this incompetent leadership class as they panic. And it's going to get a hell of a lot worse. This is video. I don't know if I'm even going to post it. It's all over the fucking place. But anyway, understand what's going on in my head.